Welcome to Five or Flop, a podcast for the best and worst historical fiction has to offer. I'm your host, Erin.
And I'm Grace, and each week we'll be reading a different historical fiction book to see if they're a five or a flop.
Our theme for season five is family and friends, and we're reading books that our family and friends have recommended. And today we don't actually have a guest host with us, but my good friend Ryleigh did pick out and suggest the book we're reading this week.
And that book is.
The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. So we're reading a real classic this time.
And don't worry, everyone, just because Ryleigh isn't here with us, we do have her thoughts, so you will hear why we are reading this book this week.
Yes, so we're gonna save that just for later. And first, let's do some catch up. How you been?
I've been lovely. We have both had a busy weekend. Halloween kind of was in our past, but the only thing that I really found notable about it compared to any other weekend was basically standing around a TV at someone's house that I did not know watching the World Series. So,
Hey, and the Dodgers won the whole thing, right?
yes, it went to God, I think 11 innings.
Jesus.
Because we were at the party, and again, standing in my heels, which I don't do much,
Hmm.
for like most of it, fixated on the screen. It got to nine, was still tied. Then we were like, okay, time to go. We're walking for most of the 10th inning to a sports bar where we watched the 11th inning. And
Where'd you
I
go this?
thought it was going to go longer and the Blue Jays were going to pull it out, but they didn't.
Well, that's fun. I'm glad you got to catch the end of it.
Of course. I mean, it was dramatic, even though it was not what I wanted, but I don't, you know me, I'm not that invested. So
No,
it was a good
baseball's more of
sign.
a casual pastime for you, I would say.
Well, you have something not in your past, but in your future to discuss.
In my future, we are finally getting close to me preparing for another vacation, which, God, where was the last like extensive trip I went on was Ireland, which was May, and now it's November. So this is a very long time. A very long time in the sense that Santiago and I had paid for and planned this cruise before I went to Ireland.
That is crazy.
So
I was getting ready to make fun of you.
that's why it feels like it's been such a long time since I've gone anywhere because this has been like on the calendar. I think we decided to go on a cruise like this time last year, and then we eventually like picked one out and everything. So it's been in the works for a very, very long time. But we're going over Thanksgiving. I'm really excited. It cannot come soon enough. It's going to be a blast. We're going to, well, as of now, we're going to Jamaica, Grand Cayman, and their island in the Bahamas. But I don't know if we're still going to be going to Jamaica because of the hurricane. We
I
got an
doubt it.
I doubt it. We got an email from the cruise line that's like, we're keeping an eye on the situation, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm like, I think they're going to make the call not to put the extra strain on the island and just like, and also it's just not going to be like in good.
It wouldn't benefit anybody
Yeah. It
involved.
it wouldn't turn out well for anyone. So I don't know what that current plan is looking like, but
Mhm.
I will report back.
All right. Well, and then it'll also be nice for me and your mother when you get home, so we don't have to worry about you guys dying on the submersible.
Oh, the submersible's in the Grand Cayman, so we will be doing the submersible regardless. But it'll be nice when we're home and proved alive from the semi-submersible, might I add.
Mhm. Are you going to fly to port? Are you going to take a Benadryl and read a book on the plane?
Well, it's not that long of a flight from DC to Miami, so I actually won't be doing that. However, I am hoping, fingers crossed, to be done with what I'm trying to currently read by then. That's very roundabout. Anyways, enough suspense. I have returned to the Hunger Games hold list. I like made it through like it was such a delay with the Hunger Games, and then it was like I hit every single green light with all the other books.
You were
And
smooth sailing.
now, sorry,
You were smooth sailing.
no, literally. And now I'm on hold again for Sunrise on the Reaping. It's a 5 week hold, which I think is astounding for a book that came out like earlier this year and like a very
And
popular one at that.
and that's the only one left, right? After that, there's no more Hunger Games books left.
Yes. I think there will probably be more in the future, but at this current time, there's not. And the movie comes out end of November.
Okay.
So that's why I'm trying to get it done before my cruise anyway, but we'll
You
see.
have a very busy end of November because we have another very important movie coming out at the end of November.
Hamnet. It's
Hamnet.
finally dropping. We're gonna have like a mid-season bonus episode for reviews on Hamnet. Now I have that, I have Sunrise on the Weeping, and I have Wicked.
Oh
So it's
man.
a big movie season for me. It's
Wait,
Aaron's Oscars.
I forgot the biggest news to share to our pod listeners,
Yes.
which is that as of today, the day we're recording, Jonathan Bailey is the sexiest man alive.
He did it. He did it. When I saw that tweet drop last night, Grace, I was so excited.
He
Finally,
deserves it.
finally they picked the right person. They found him. They found the sexiest man alive.
Also, I Googled it real quick. Hugh Jackman was the sexiest man alive in 2008. So now our quest is complete.
Our quest is complete. They need to just end it. Like they can't top themselves. It's over.
No, like, unless they pick Joe Alwyn, we have no more dog in the fight. And they're
Joe
not going to do
Alwyn,
that.
why would they complete the pot? Well, maybe he gives such a compelling performance in Hamnet. Who is he in Hamnet?
He must be like, I forget his name, Agnes's brother, like Bartholomew
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. Well, that's part of the fun. Is going in not knowing who Joe Alwyn is going to be in this one.
He's always such an enigma. It's part of his brand.
It is. What brand? Anyways, what are you reading?
I've recently finished reading a nonfiction book called Capote's Women about Truman Capote and all of his like socialite ladies.
Hmm.
If anyone is familiar with the TV show Feud that is based on this book, I think,
I
well,
am
you would probably enjoy it because it's like a Ryan Murphy, famously
okay.
of Glee TV show.
Do you know the only Ryan Murphy I've really seen is Glee?
Let's see. I never watched American Horror Story because
My
I get
sister,
scared.
my sister watched it, so I've seen like episodes of American Horror Story.
Okay. And then there were all the American Crime Stories. I watched the O.J. Simpson one, which was
Hmm.
pretty good. And I didn't watch the Versace murder one, although I want to because people say it's really good and also Darren Criss is in it.
I was gonna say the Darren Criss one.
hmm But I'm kind of like, like last year they put out the one about the Menendez brothers. And that's the
Yeah.
one where Ryan Murphy was like, I think the Menendez brothers were sleeping with each other. And the Menendez brothers, who are very much like alive and stuff, were like, no, we weren't. And don't
Yeah.
say we did.
Yes.
So I don't know. But this one is like lower stakes. It's much more gossip related than anything else. Like,
Okay.
you know, if I were those women, I simply would not go back in time and tell a man who writes books about his friends that my husband was cheating on me and stuff, because then he'll write a book about it and then I'll get embarrassed, which is
No,
what happened.
just like the House of Doors.
Basically, yes.
Exact same situation. You wouldn't tell Somerset Maugham about your affair either.
But much more, God, what was it? Who was it that said that thing about Taylor Swift? Beautiful gowns. That's what this Truman Capote is. It's beautiful gowns.
Anyways, the Poisonwood Bible.
Let's get into it.
Let's get in. Let's start with the synopsis. Although I feel like a lot of the listeners will have some semblance of familiarity.
Mm.
The Poisonwood Bible is a story told by the wife and four daughters of Nathan Price, a fierce evangelical Baptist who takes his family in mission to the Belgian Congo in 1959. They carry with them everything they believe they will need from home, but soon find that all of it, from garden scenes to scripture, is calamitously transformed on African soil. What follows is a suspenseful epic of one family's tragic undoing and remarkable reconstruction over the course of 3 decades in post-colonial Africa.
Okay, I have something to say. I
Yes.
did not read this before you put it into the script. Like, obviously, I read a synopsis before I read the book, but not this particular one. It is interesting to me that the only character they name is Nathan Price when he's the only character who does not have a point of view.
I agree, and at the same time, I really like that.
It's thematic. It's thematically interesting and significant.
It is. It is very thematically interesting. All right, let's talk about Barbara.
Yes.
So I'm going to bounce around in the author bio because I took these notes in no particular order at all. But as a child, she did live in Africa as her father was a physician there. Throughout his career, he worked with like underserved communities, and one of them was in Congo. They were not missionaries, but did live there in 1963. So relatively same time period, kind of like right after all the big stuff we'll talk about in historical accuracy, but right around that time period. She went to DePaul University on a piano scholarship, which I thought was really interesting. She started out kind of as like a technical science writer, really hated it. So then she got into freelancing for a while and then eventually became a full-time author in the 80s. This book was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize whenever it came out. I didn't jot the
Oh,
year down.
I will be on that. You know
Thank
that's my
you.
favorite
Thank
thing.
you. And it was an Oprah's Book Club pick. She did win the Pulitzer in 2023 for Demon Copperhead. So reclaimed her crown there, which good for her. Shockingly, there is no movie version of this book,
That's interesting.
which I was astounded because I feel like what else are they showing in high school classrooms? Like you read this book. I didn't read this book in high school, but you read this book and then but there is a mini series in development at HBO.
Good. All
So
right.
thank God we can add that to the mini series list. Uh,
Also, in
yes.
1998, the Pulitzer was won by The Hours by Michael Cunningham, which I feel like is very notable. And there's that movie, that Oscar-winning movie with Meryl Streep and Nicole Kidman. So, okay, fine.
And I do have a very long quote if you would give me some space to share, or maybe we just link to it in the discussion note, or they're not called discussion notes. We link to it in the description of the episode because it is very long, but it's about, so I'm maybe just going to skim it and pull some key phrases out, but it's about why specifically she chose to write this book, where it's set and when it's set.
Okay. So give us some selections and then we'll have the whole thing linked for everyone to go and read for themselves.
Yes. And it is kind of like she's got some like questions about just this book in general. And there's also like filters you can select her FAQs from for her different books. But this is from the very last one. This story came from a long-term fascination with politics and culpability, and my belief that what happened to the Congo in 1961 is one of the most important political parables of a century. Here's how I frame the question being, why did you choose this subject to myself? Nearly every industrialized country has arrived at its present prosperity by doing awful things, extracting wealth from some unfortunate locale, whether in forms of tea or diamonds, cheap labor, or even human slaves. Most of us alive today didn't participate in those decisions, but we do benefit materially from this history. How do we think about that, if at all? England has a strong tradition of post-colonial literature, but here in the US, we can hardly even say the word post-colonial. We were a colony ourselves. We didn't have colonies. We're not like that. If you can overlook an agricultural economy originally built on slave labor and the odd coup our CIA has organized here and there to control economic interests in Chile's copper, Congo's cobalt, and so on, we still would really like to think of ourselves as the global good guys. Who wouldn't? Denial is one path to redemption, but it can leave certain holes and the possibility of repeat offense. I'm keen to look at history and study truth in all its facets. So that's
Wow.
the bulk of the quote, but I thought it was really impactful. I thought a really interesting lens and one I completely agree with. Like the US loves to separate ourselves as well. We didn't have colonies like they did. We were a colony. But you look at how we treat other nations globally and still are treating them to this day, and it's exactly what Barbara said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that kind of, maybe that I considered putting that in historical accuracy, but I think that was a great way to frame kind of the book before we move into our discussion.
Yeah, I think it's good to have some kind of lead in.
Yes, I agree. And I think also because I know we've talked from time to time, I think about like Chains with Laurie Halse Anderson, like an author writing about a culture that's not necessarily their own. I think this one is kind of sits at an interesting point because it's like, well, the white missionaries there were from the US, but at the same time, like the culture she's talking about is not the US. So I think it's an interesting framing she has there and one that I
Mm.
completely agree with.
Mm.
Have you read anything else by her?
I've read one Barbara Kingsolver before. I read actually the one in the my copy of the Poisonwood Bible. It was excerpted in the back. It was her book called Flight Behavior, and that was set in Appalachia. I liked it, but I didn't love it. It
Hmm.
it was very well written, but it did kind of give me that. Do you ever read like a literary fiction book and you're just kind of like, this makes me sad? Like not for a reason, it was just kind of vaguely all sad, and I
Yeah.
got that vibe from it. I do want to
Passive.
read Demon Copperhead though. I haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, no, I haven't read that one. I want to. With what you were saying about being sad, kind of like all of Kristen Hanna's books, low key, just have that underlying like, oh, this is bad, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Not bad in terms of clearly I love her books, but you know.
But I also want to add, because I don't really have any other place to say this, so I'll say it now. The Poisonwood Bible is basically the same age as you and I. But it is absolutely having some kind of crazy renaissance right now.
It
Because
is.
I had to wait in a very long hold line to check it out from the library. And not only do I have four digital library cards, and it was not instantly available at any of my four libraries. I was like, that's fine. I'll just go pick it up in person from the library like we have done for years.
Hmm.
And the DC library had 19 copies and they were all checked out. So,
I also couldn't get it. I wound up buying it at a used bookstore that I was at with my mom because it was like $5. And I'm like, well, at this point, like I'm not gonna get it otherwise.
no, I put it on hold at my shortest wait list, like in advance. I keep like, I try to keep up with my list of what I have
Yeah.
to read for the pod. But my theory is that people are reading Demon Copperhead and then being like, wow, this is amazing. I would like to read another Barbara Kingsolver. And I
Yeah.
think that this is her most famous other book by far. Other people might
Oh,
disagree with me, but I think it's this.
I think it's this. I think maybe if we are looking back in like 20 years, Demon Copperhead might have surpassed it. I
Yeah, and
think
maybe it
now,
already has just by virtue of having won the Pulitzer, but you can't really say that for a book that's almost 30 and a book that's not even
yeah,
5.
it's recency bias also. I have not read this. I know a lot of people that I went to school with did. Like, I really think my sister read this for school. I have a vivid memory of that.
We did not read this for school. One of the years for summer reading when you were allowed to like pick from a list, one of the books was a Barbara Kingsolver. It was The Bean Trees,
I think
but
that's
I
her
did not
first.
read it.
Yeah.
So I cannot speak to The Bean Trees.
Okay. I think that was her first. That sounded like the Lorax. I speak for the trees.
I
I
speak
speak
for
for
The
the
Bean
bean
Trees.
trees. All right. Should we get into our disclaimer?
Yes.
Our judgments come based on the book and characters within the book rather than any real historical figures they may have been based on, and also spoilers ahead. But as you said, this is a very famous, like 30-year-old book. So,
So it's on you.
yeah. All right. I think well, my opinion, I think we should start with the quote that's like in that very, very first like chapter of the book that we both have written down.
Oh my gosh, did we write down the same? Wow. So that
We
clearly
did.
shows we're so good at identifying a theme.
And honestly, it was so funny because I saw you put in your notes in the script before I did, and I'm like, well, let me just copy paste that because I know I wrote down the exact same thing in my notes anyways. But the quote is, and this is a perspective of it's kind of like an omniscient, but like the mothers, focus on the mother, I think a little more. And the quote is about the mother and daughters. Later, you'll have to decide how much sympathy they deserve. And
When
just
I read that, I was like, oh, Barbara Kingsolver means business.
oh yeah, and it's just such a good framing of like seeing the impact of just like what happened during their time in Congo, like how it shaped all of the daughters, and what level of complicity they have in things moving forward. But also the mother who was, as we'll get into this, she was in an abusive relationship with her husband. She did not have any agency, and yet she waited a long time until she left him and took her daughters.
Hmm.
So,
They, all of them, except for the youngest daughter, had some level of complicity involvement on a varying scale.
mhm.
And it was very interesting to switch back and forth because you get perspectives from all of the women. So four, no, the four daughters and the mother,
And what's so
and
interesting
they're
about
all different.
yeah, and what's so interesting about what you just said is it ties back so thoroughly to that quote I read of like, well, we weren't involved in the decisions, but we all benefit from it. And I mean, I don't know if you would argue that these girls really benefited in many ways, but their
Mm.
lives were shaped by what happened.
Well, also what I think is so interesting, I don't have a great structure to what I want to talk about, so we'll probably
Neither
be
do I.
jumping all over the place. But essentially, they arrive in the Congo. They plan to be there for a year. The father is going to be in the mission for a year, and then he's going to be swapped out. Some other minister is going to come and take his post. And then while they're there, shortly before that year is up, that is when the Congo gains independence. When they arrive in 1959, they're still a colony of Belgium. And then shortly before they're supposed to leave, Congo declares their independence. And everyone's supposed they want to get out, essentially. Everyone is telling them time to leave. Obviously, this is a very politically unsafe time to be here. There will be
Mhm.
violence. You're white people, you're from America, you should leave. And the father says no, he doesn't want to leave. He's been placed here by God. He'll stay until someone can relieve him. So
Mhm.
they stay. So they stay in the Congo for longer than they were supposed to. And they don't have money. They're running low on food.
Yeah, and
All of
it's like
these things.
the mission itself has pulled out, and they're like, we
Yes.
will no longer support you being here.
Yeah. Because they're like, well, we told you to leave. And they're like, well, we didn't really want you here in the first place anyway, which was a
Mhm.
whole other thing. Um,
And
but
I'm just going to talk quickly about kind of how this book is set up a little bit. So you have like the first 100, this is a longer book. This was like over 500, I think, pages,
just a bit.
which is obviously not the longest book we've read for the pod, but enough for me to consider it a longer book. So, like the first 150 pages or so is kind of just that first year leading up to independence. For me, I thought this first section was very slow. It was establishing a lot. It was establishing, the characters, what they're doing there, the four girls. And I will say it was very easy to tell all four girls apart. They were so distinct. And even in a book where you have like multiple, switching point of view chapters, like fantastic. But
And I think we'll probably end up talking about like the overall structure as we are now, and then getting into the characters one by one, maybe after that.
absolutely, absolutely. And then you have a much longer section that is kind of their life in Congo post-independence and what happens there. That is where the mother Oleana takes the daughters or the surviving daughters, and leaves Nathan. And then from there I thought that was going to be like happening at the end of the book, but you still have a decent chunk of book after that, which is about their lives post leaving the father, is how I will probably word that the best. Post leaving the father, whether that is still in Congo, in the US, or elsewhere.
And that's what I highlighted. I think that that choice is what takes it from being a good book to a great book. Because
Yes.
I was so shocked when they left the Congo and there was 150 pages left in the book. I was just like, what is the book going to be about? It's like in a lesser book, that would have been the end.
This is
It would,
literally what we said about Atmosphere. This is the
yeah,
exact same conversation of like a lesser author would have made Atmosphere chronological. A lesser author here would have ended when they left the father.
yes, because this, if it had been a book that started when they arrived in Congo and ended when they left, it would have been as deep thematically as an action movie, basically. It would have been, here's this thing we have to get through. Great, we got through it. We can all go home. But
Hmm.
what it actually is about trauma on an interpersonal level. And then also, even though your main characters are this white Christian family, it is about the lingering effects of colonialism.
Yeah.
Like in microcosm, this family can't recover from the evils that colonialism has wrought on them, even though they are the colonists,
Hmm.
and the Congo can't recover either.
Yeah.
It's so much deeper than we just need to get out. For example, the oldest sister, Rachel,
Hmm.
she's like the beauty queen. She's all about how pretty she is. She's all about her
Hmm.
blonde hair and all the boyfriends that she had at home. She's very much like the superficial teenager.
Hmm.
And she this shocked me at first, and then it made so much sense to me the more I read. She never goes back to America.
Yeah.
She gets out of the Congo by shacking up with this sketchy guy who has a pilot's license, and they settle down in South Africa somewhere.
Hmm.
And finally later she said like I could never go home because I wasn't normal anymore. Like
Yeah.
after what happened to me here, I could never go home and just be like the popular girl ever again. So we
Hmm.
see through the end there are in those last 150 pages, there's a lot of time jumping. Like
Hmm.
20 or 30 years pass. We see snapshots of all the characters' lives in that time. And she marries up a bunch. She has a bunch of husbands. She has like she runs a fancy hotel that
Hmm.
only white people stay in, even though
Yeah.
it's across the border from the Congo, things like that. But you just see that even she, who seems to grapple the least on a philosophical level with what happened to her, even she is able to vocalize, I am so changed by the things that happened to me that I
Hmm.
don't feel able to return to the person who I was before.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this book brilliant.
Yes. So should we go through the characters now? Now that you've kind of segued us there?
Now that I've started, yeah, let's
And I
continue.
think I think we'll still talk about Rachel, because we have to talk about her whole time in Congo and all of that. Um, I kind of want to start with Nathan.
Yeah, because he's the driver of all of this, but arguably he's the least deep internally, and you get to know him maybe like the least intimately, but
You
we
get the
know
least
what we
screen
need to
time with
know.
him. Yeah. You get the least time on page, but like you said, it's we get what we need. But
Hmm.
Nathan was really interesting because through Oleana's chapters, you get to see who he used to be. And she was like in love with this guy and like so excited to be married. And then he went off to war. And I believe it would have been World War II. And he got like really fucked up in war. Like I think he got like hit with something and he was just like never the same after that.
Well, also crucially, he was the only one of his unit to survive
Yes.
something.
Hmm.
He like I think there was an explosion. He stumbled off somewhere, was shielded, came back out the next day. He was the only one alive.
Hmm.
So that fear of basically being like a coward, of leaving early, is what informs his decision, kind of one to one, to stay in the
Yeah,
Congo, even
exactly.
through all of this government upheaval.
And through that trauma, he starts really diving into the evangelical Baptist community and becomes a preacher. And he's just like her even before, and he definitely, gets much more of a state of religious psychosis in Africa. But even before, he's like, there were scenes where Oleana was like, I was eating dirt outside because he was not giving me food. Like it was just like awful. Like tr every horrible preacher controlling description you've ever seen, but just like translated so well onto the page.
So this is clearly not a story of this idyllic American family was so happy and then they came to Africa and it all fell
Yeah.
apart.
I think
Clearly,
it's
Oleana
important.
should have left him well before, first of all, well before they had all of the children that they had,
Mhm.
before they all came to Africa in the first place. And she understands her culpability in that later
Mhm. Yes, and that's something you can definitely see in that later section of the book, her grappling with for the rest of her life.
on.
But I think that's something that's done really well and really intentionally is that they were already messed up well before moving to Congo.
So then we talked about, should we talk about Oleana next? The
Yeah.
mother? I feel like that's already a good introduction to her, that she occupies the most questionable space between culpability and victimhood,
Hmm.
and that she was at the mercy of her husband, but she also had a responsibility to protect her daughters. And there's a moment later where we've already said one of the daughters dies in Africa while they're in the Congo. And it's that pushes Oleana over the edge to get the rest of the girls out.
Hmm.
And you'd think if you're able to do it now, why couldn't you do it before? Like,
Hmm.
why did it have to take this?
Yeah.
But yeah, so everything that you hear from her, it's in flashback,
Hmm.
and she never recovers from the death of her daughter.
Yeah.
She's mourning her for the rest of her life, and she doesn't ever recover. And
Hmm.
I think part of it is she played favorites.
Yeah.
She played favorites with her daughters, and the one that died was her favorite.
Yeah, and the one that died was Ruth Marie, which was the youngest. She got bitten by a black mamba snake. Or no,
Yes.
a green mamba snake, excuse me.
Good for you for remembering what type of
Thank
snake
you.
killed Ruth May.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, well, Ruth May died, so she was the youngest. She was only like 5 years old, and she was
Yeah.
the one that we said at the beginning, like clearly a 5-year-old, like is not responsible in this situation, of
Yeah, yeah.
course.
And you do get a perspective from her, which is interesting. It's almost like reading Room
Yes.
from the perspective of the child, because you can tell that she has a sense of what's going on, but she just doesn't understand it. She's not old enough.
Hmm.
She knows like she can't gauge how important things are. Like
Yeah.
every day they take a pill to ward off malaria, and she doesn't take them because they're yucky. She pretends to and then hides them, and then she gets malaria. She
Hmm.
understands that her mother is depressed when the father hands down the edict that they're not going to leave the Congo. And she basically, the Oleana takes to her bed, doesn't get out, and Ruth May
Hmm.
just goes with her, and they
Yeah.
both are sick together.
Hmm.
They have that really deep connection. And later Oleana expresses this belief that, when push comes to shove, a mother has to protect her youngest.
Hmm. And that
And
I think is most clearly seen with, well, not her next oldest, but she had two of the girls are twins, with one of the twins, Ada,
mhm.
who
And
is
Ada or Ada, I don't really know.
yeah, I was saying Ada in my head, but it might be Ada.
I don't
It's
know.
okay. It's okay.
But she has twins, Leah and Ada, and
Hmm.
Ada is disabled.
Yes.
And so that kind of by default makes her the one who needs Oleana the most, quote unquote, after
Well,
the
and
death
that's
of Ruth
that's
May.
really visible. There's a scene where like fire ants like storm the village, and those can be very life-threatening in the wrong circumstances, and this was those circumstances. And Oleana had to make a choice between picking up Ruth Marie or saving Ada, who
Ruth
couldn't
May.
make it on her own. Ruth May, excuse me. And Oleana had to make a choice between saving Ruth May, who to, pick her up and carry her, or doing that for Ada, who couldn't outrun the ants. And it is not at all concealed from Ada at all that she is left behind. She was not chosen.
And then later, when they're fleeing the Congo, it's Oleana and the three remaining daughters. Rachel goes off with her pilot. So Rachel is no longer part of the equation. And they have another boat or plane or something that can only take two of them. And Oleana takes Ada with her and leaves Leah behind.
Hmm.
And she's making up for it for
Yeah,
leaving her behind that day. But it doesn't work fully because Ada knows this wouldn't be happening if Ruth May wasn't dead.
yeah.
I'm the default now that Ruth May is dead.
Hmm. Yes, exactly. And it's really tragic. It's so hard, but also at the same time, it's like I don't know. It was such a powerful. Both were such powerful scenes.
Mhm. Ada is a very interesting character because I don't really know what to make of her. She's the one that I probably like the most in terms of just straight up, who would be my friend, I guess. But
Hmm.
for her whole life up to the time that they're in the Congo, she's disabled. She walks with a limp and she can't walk very quickly. She's really uneven on both sides of her body. She doesn't have full control over both sides of her
Yeah,
body.
there was some. They described it in the book of like something happened when they were twins in the womb, and like Leah like sapped more nutrients, and that killed part of Ada's brain. And I don't know the technical words for any of that, but that is what was described in the book.
Yeah, this does not get very deep into like
She has this.
diagnoses or modern medicine terms or, we're describing it as best we're able
Mhm.
based on the information that Barbara Kingsolver has chosen to give us. But also she doesn't talk very much and she really is in her own head interacting with language. She
Mhm.
reads words backwards, she likes palindromes, things like that.
Mhm.
But then she maybe because so much of her life is internal and she out of everybody is the only daughter and really the only member of the family that did not have faith in her family. She
Hmm.
did not really consider that they would love or protect her. She always kind of felt like she was on her own. And so when she and her mother, they're the only two that go back to America. They go back to Georgia, where they're from. And Leah ends up becoming a doctor. She somehow in her studies finds a doctor who is doing experimental work on her type of disability. And he's like, there's no reason that you should still be like this. If you had had therapies or anything like when you were
Hmm.
younger, you would
Yeah.
be fine. And so again, that's another demonstration of she didn't have faith in
Yeah.
her family and it was completely justified. So
Her family
she,
was not there for her.
yeah, recovers completely, becomes a doctor, and she grapples less with everything that happened because to her, she was prepared for it emotionally. She didn't fall apart like Rachel. She didn't have, like Leah, the last daughter we
Hmm.
have to talk about, she didn't have these super dramatic swings in allegiance or faith. Um, it was obviously she couldn't have predicted exactly what would happen to the family,
But
but
she had to have been the least surprised by any of it.
she was ready. Yeah, she was able to confront all of it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think she showed probably that, I mean, we only see snippets of them when they're older, right? Probably the healthiest way of coping of any of them.
Hmm. And because she's the only one left in America, she's the one who sees their mother the most,
Hmm.
and she cares for her, but she still stays,
Arm's
somewhat
length.
emotionally separate because she knows that Oleana is never going to forgive herself for the death of Ruth May. And Ada is maybe the only one who really knows the extent to which that Ruth May was the favorite
Yeah.
because of her disability, because neither of the other sisters were disabled. So they
Mhm.
never were forced to interact with that reality.
Yeah, they didn't have to confront that like she did. Um, while we're talking about Ada, let's talk a minute about the lion chapter. I just don't know where we're gonna fit it in elsewhere.
Oh my gosh. You're right. So I'd never said this, but when you said the first 150 pages of the book are a bit slower, I agree with you. Not as much happens. It's kind of setting you up for the dynamics of the
And
family, dynamics of the Congo.
I will say, because I am always the first to criticize pacing,
Mm.
after having finished the book, that slow build worked really well. While
Mm.
I was in it, I felt like it was dragging, but once I finished it, I'm like, this was really essential for how quick everything moved afterwards.
No, I completely agree. And also, while I was reading it, I was cognizant that the plot wasn't moving very quickly, but I did not begrudge any of that time because the language is so beautiful. I
Yes.
was enjoying all of it. So you warned me, you started
Yeah.
before I did. So you were like, the beginning's a little slow. But the first thing probably that gave me a real like sit up, like while I was reading, oh my God moment, is this Ada Lion chapter.
Hmm.
And I don't even really know how to describe it, but it's so poetic.
It
Essentially,
it's subtle too.
she's walking home. She's supposed to be with her sister. The sister runs ahead because she's always sick of having to walk slowly, as slow as Ada walks, but also because she likes to steal this time for herself because she's so rarely by herself.
Hmm.
And what literally happens is that a lion stalks her on the way home, but it doesn't attack her. It ends up attacking something else, another animal or a vulture or something. It's unclear to me. But in the moment, I wasn't sure if there was a lion stalking Ada or if she was just believing it, or like if she was just creating that in her mind. If there was a person stalking Ada and she was just using this metaphor of a lion in her head because she
Hmm.
plays with language. If she was attacked or eaten or not, like I had to read the next chapter to be
Yeah.
sure of what was happening.
And the next chapter is basically like someone goes to the family's house and was like, your daughter was just eaten by a lion. And then they showed up, like Ada shows up at home and they're like, oh my God, it was a miracle. Like she was saved. She would just appeared here.
But oh my gosh,
Oh
it's
my, yeah.
so
Power. And just this, like I had to go after. I read it and then I read the next chapter where it's like your daughter was eaten by a lion. I had to go back and reread it because I was like, it was just so like subtly woven in. Such powerful writing in that scene.
Oh my God, yeah. So I would genuinely recommend, like, even if you don't want to read this whole book or if you've read it already, like go back and read that as like a short story. Like it works completely independently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Hold on. Okay. This is going to be like a weird connection, but I had to read in high school a short story by Joyce Carol Oates called Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? Have you
Oh
ever
my
read
God.
that?
Hang on. Where are you? I know that title. I know I've read it. I don't remember it. Oh, was that the one with like the it was like the guy who was stalking her.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is exactly, if you have read this short story, this is exactly what this chapter is like because it's basically about this girl. She goes out at night, she picks up a guy, and then the guy shows up at her house the next day to take her into the desert and murder her.
Hmm.
And the end of the story, you don't know exactly what happens because you know she goes back into the house to try and call the police or call her mother, and he stops her, but you don't know exactly how. You don't know if it's violent or not. And that's what this made me think of, is this short story and this
Yeah.
chapter from the Poisonwood Bible.
Yes.
So it's like a
Yeah.
very random connection, but it was the first thing that I thought of because
That's
it's like
crazy. I have
it's so
not thought of
beautifully
that
written.
story in so long.
It's so beautifully written and it's so it confuses you on purpose.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
gosh, it's so good. And there were other moments like that sprinkled throughout the Poisonwood Bible. Like at the beginning, Oleana is referencing a child left behind. And
Hmm.
later you come to know that, of course, that's Ruth May who
Yes.
dies. But I wasn't sure. I was like, is she going to have a miscarriage while she's out
Yeah.
there? Is she going to, at one point, one of the men in the Congo, one of the powerful men in the village that they're stationed in, offers to marry Rachel, who's the oldest daughter.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, is that referencing leaving Rachel behind because they sold her off for food?
Hmm.
I That mystery was really interesting to me whenever an Oleana chapter came up for the first half of the book.
Hmm. Should we talk about Leah?
We should, because she's very interesting, as
You
they
have,
all.
yes, you have such an interesting comment in your notes that, like, I want to know what you mean. And that comment is Leah has a tinge of evil to her. She would have been evil if she was a boy. And I don't know what that means.
The reason that I put that is Leah, even though she is, I would say, the most righteous one, like she stays in the Congo, she marries a local man who, of course,
Hmm.
is black. They have children together. They do a lot of work for education and independence for the Congo and all of that. But when the book starts, she is the father's little acolyte. She
Yes.
loves him. And just that intensely dramatic switch in her personality, I just feel like that's the people who are like that are volatile. And
Hmm.
I think men are like that. I think men who get
Okay.
red pilled are like that. And that's
Okay.
what that made me think of. I was just like, she has a very, I don't know, chaotic energy to me. And she was like, she thought of others a lot, but she didn't realize how much she thought of herself. Like
Yeah.
she never was ever in consideration of her twin sister.
Yeah. Oh God, no.
She, yeah, left her behind. She created opportunities to leave that girl behind. She
No,
did not like
literally.
her at all. Um, but she was so to the in the way that Rachel was not living her inner life at all, basically. Leah was living it too much. They were foils in that way.
And I thought Leo was interesting because of the guilt she specifically continued to carry for Ruth May's death. because there's a point where Ruth May kind of like followed her around all the time. And there was a point where I forget what they were doing. They were going to look for something and someone had planted the green mamba.
Mm.
But obviously they did not know that. So the girls were going and Ruth May was like kind of scared. She didn't want to go. And Leah was like, put your shoes on. You're coming with us. Like you have to go. Like be brave. You're coming with us. And that's
She
when,
said something about like who is not brave enough to come.
yeah, something to that effect.
Like
Something like I think
baiting her, yeah.
something an older sister would 100% say. Like in theory, like such a harmless type of baiting, and then of course it turned to tragedy in this instance. But I thought that was it's interesting to me like how much of her continued path in the Congo was shaped by that guilt that she carried, and then also the guilt of having been her father's follower for so long.
Hmm. And also because she and her sister Rachel both stay in Africa. But
Hmm.
Rachel basically constructs for herself as American a life as she can. Like she surrounds herself with white people, with diplomats from Europe, and that's her life. She can't go back. She doesn't feel she can go back to America, but she doesn't want to be in Africa particularly. She wants to be in colonial Africa.
Yeah.
Leah does the opposite. She marries a black man, she has black children, she lives amongst black people. And
Hmm.
so she, more than anyone else, spends her whole life grappling with race and confronting the fact that she's white. And she resents that she can't overcome the fact that she's white, that she will
Hmm.
always be white forever.
Yeah.
And you get the sense it's very interesting because she knows that it's almost a danger to her family that she's white,
Hmm.
but she
Yeah,
cannot.
because it's still so soon after independence. Like there's a lot of, as we'll talk about in historical accuracy, there's a lot of political unrest, and of course, like lots of lingering emotions, shall we say, to people who were Belgian, who looked Belgian. And I think in many cases, rightfully so, like as we'll talk about some of the atrocities that were happening. But, grappling with that, I think she does think she's endangering her family to an extent.
Mm, and she kind of is.
There's
She's
even
not
points
wrong.
where, no, and there are points where like she'll send her sons to school in the US and they'll stay with Oleana, so they can get an education and be safer.
And they come back and they get vaccines, which I think is a really interesting point, especially because Ruth May earlier in the book gets malaria.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
I think I want to revisit a character because I think I want to talk about how Nathan dies and what happens
Yes.
there because he kind of turns into like a legend in the Congo.
Hmm. And it's so interesting because after the women all leave him, they don't see him again. Like
Mm-mm.
you hear about him every so often, but it's almost like he's Bigfoot.
Yeah, so this, exact like a legend. So I think Leah gets the most of it because I think Leah is in the most realistic situation to seek out information. Not that she ever makes an attempt to go find him. I don't think she wants that. Frankly, I think that would have been horrendous for her just as a person to try and
Her
do that.
particularly out of all of the sisters.
But so she starts to hear rumors about like this like crazy preacher man with this wild beard who lives in the woods and he had like five wives that all left him and then eventually he's like burned. But what they come to realize like the sisters have this little bit of a reunion at some point and I think maybe Ada says it, but the five wives were referring to Oleana and the daughters who had all left him. And they
Mm.
kind of got like mystified into, or not mystified, like turned into a
Mythologized.
mythologized. Thank you, mythologized into like this story to go along with this crazy preacher.
And the other interesting thing about that is that scene where the sisters reunite because they so rarely are all together, the family, they never like each other.
Mm-mm.
Like they never come back together to even be like, well, we don't get along, but we've all gone through this together. They don't like each other.
No, no, they had like a
Probably after
horrible
this,
trip.
probably after this point when we see them, they'll never all be together ever again.
And I
Like
don't think
maybe
they'd want to.
no, and in a more sentimental book or a book by an author with different priorities, like maybe a Kristen Hanna, they would all come together, or at the very least, they would be like, my sisters and I can't be together, but we went through this together and I'll always have them in my heart or whatever. These sisters aren't like that. They, it's kind of implied vaguely that after Ruth May, they have nothing like keeping them together anymore.
Mhm.
They're not forced to be together by their parents. They've all diverged on these wildly different paths and they're just separate and that's that. They're not really a family.
Yeah. You don't really get an uplifting any ending at any point with this, but I think it was good we didn't.
And it's not a sad ending
No.
particularly. The book just kind of stops, but it's,
It's a thinker.
this is what happened and you just have to go on dealing with that.
Hmm.
They're like, you can't change what happens to you in life. You can make choices that are wise, but otherwise, you're not in control of much. And that's that.
Yeah.
This is a book, yeah, like I said, it's about what happens to these characters. It's
Hmm.
about the Congo, some, but even that, like, the people of the Congo are not the main characters.
No.
And that's not something I'm criticizing this book for because this is clearly the book that Barbara Kingsolver intended to write. It's
Yeah.
not erasing the people of the Congo because clearly it is an extremely overwhelming theme in this book that colonialism is bad.
Yeah.
And there are other books that you can read that focus on the people of the Congo. But the point
Yeah.
of this one is to write what Barbara Kingsolver knows, which is here's the effects on this white family of the choices that they've all
And she lays it out so beautifully of like, this is not something that in the US we want to talk about because we're not culpable in it. We didn't have colonies, and yet we are having this direct impact in this exact same way in more modern times, even. And, it's not just hurting people who have been directly like had a quote colonizer, like an actual ruling power.
made. I think this is a fantastic book.
I thought it was great.
Mhm.
It's grown on me a lot. Like the more it's one of the ones, the more I sit with it, the more I like it. Shall we hear why Riley recommended this one for us?
I would love to hear from Ryleigh.
All right. So I give you a little background about Riley, but she's my good friend, and I think her write-up like kind of comes across with a lot of details about her that, comes through and why she picked this. The Poisonwood Bible has been one of my favorite books for years. First, when I read it as a teenager, and still now over 10 years later. As a teen, I loved it because I saw parts of myself in different characters, questioning religion and wrestling with beliefs and morals. Looking at it now, Looking at it through my perspective now, nearing the end of my clinical psychology doctorate, it's essentially 500 plus pages of fictional yet deeply realistic mental health portraits. The story offers depictions of complex trauma, attachment patterns, the intergenerational transmission of distress, cultural biases, and moral psychology. It shows resilience and post traumatic growth, illustrates family systems, theories, and action, and clearly captures narrative identity, how each character constructs their own version of shared events. One of my deepest held beliefs is that as a people, we are meaning making beings, and the story illuminates many of the ways we hurt, process, adapt, and heal. I genuinely hope y'all enjoy it. I really do love this book. And I think she put in a lot more beautiful technical wording what we have been saying about the importance of that final section of the book, because it's not just as you're going through it, it's how you're dealing and growing from that trauma, or not growing, but having to grow as a result of that trauma.
And Ryleigh puts all of these great specific terms onto what's happening in the book, and none of that is spelled out in the book, but
Yes.
it's all present and you can tell.
Yes.
You're
It is.
not reading this and being like, "Oh my gosh, that was what's going on." You know as you're reading it.
And even the specific wording Riley used in some of these instances are not ones that I would have selected with my vernacular. Obviously, it is, in clinical psychology, like that is her language there. But every single word she's like, I'm like, oh, that's another way of saying what this scene was about. That's about what this was about. It's clear. It's not like a. I feel like sometimes meaning gets prescribe to books well after they're written, but I feel like these meanings were intentional during the writing process.
And when Ryleigh says that these are fictional yet deeply realistic mental health portraits, that's part of the beauty of the book because if this happened to a real family, this rings true for this
Yes.
to be what happened to them after the fact. It's
Hmm.
not too fanciful, it's not too out there. It feels true,
Exactly.
which makes it all the more impactful.
Yes, absolutely. Historical accuracy?
Yes, I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
All right. So, I feel like there was a ton of things that I left out in this because I feel like it's just such a rich book to pull from for history. But I mostly focused on independence in the Congo, and then a couple other notes I found from Barbara Kingsolver's website, which I thought were interesting, kind of in her process that weren't necessarily like historical accuracy related. But she read the King James Bible every single day so she could internalize the pattern of speaking for the family and especially for Nathan and just like how he would have approached wording things. And also old magazines like the Saturday Evening Post to figure out what teen slang was like at the time, which I thought was cute because teen slang is a fickle thing and changes so frequently. And I think she did a great job with Rachel there, especially Rachel.
Oh, yeah.
She also did a lot of travel to Africa for the authenticity of the setting, getting as close as she could. I believe while she was there, there was a conflict going on at the time, and she was not able to travel to the Congo, but she, as close as she could just to get like that anecdotal experiences. All right, let's talk Congolese independence.
Woo.
So the Congo began as a colony of Belgium and it became independent in 1960 and went through some name changes over time. Notably, it was referred to as Zaire in the book. It's now back to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I think it's flip-flopped between Democratic Republic of the Congo was what it was originally called upon independence.
Okay. And then they switched to Zaire and now
Zaire, excuse
Democratic
me,
Republic
yes.
of the Congo.
Zaire,
Okay.
yes. And now it's Democratic Republic of the Congo. So King Leopold II set the stage for colonial conquest. Yeah, you're giving me a thumbs down. I wish our audience could see that because he is horrible.
Bad
That
man.
was actually, have you heard of the book? And I haven't read it, King Leopold's Ghost.
No.
Okay, well, that is a book name that I remember that was on like a list of ones we could pick from in my AP European history class. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot about like the colonization of the Congo. Again, I don't know because I did not read that one, but I do want to look into it again. Anyways, so his setting the stage for colonial conquest in Africa led to the Berlin Conference, aka the carving up of Africa, if you are familiar with that political cartoon. But it was in 1884 and 1885, and that set the rules, quotation marks, for colonialism in Africa, and it sanctioned Belgian rule of the Congo. So, under the name of the Congo Free State, which was a horrible, ironic name with what I'm about to say, the people underwent massive atrocities by the Belgians, forced labor, kidnappings, burning villages, and infamously cutting off hands and other mutilations, very popular with children as well. So, in 1908, in the wake of international criticism, which apparently Mark Twain was a big critic of colonization in the Congo,
Okay.
according
Good.
to the Britannica Encyclopedia, the Belgian parliament voted to annex the Congo Free State. So basically, they bought it from Leopold and then, like, kind of took over the rule.
Okay, so it just kind of went from absolute monarchy to parliamentary
I
monarchy.
believe so. Yeah, I was a little blurry on the details, but yes.
Okay.
So Belgium was still ruling at this point in time.
Understood.
In 1956, there was a political manifesto calling for immediate independence. And then Patrice Lumumba was a Congolese national movement leader, which was one of the political parties. I believe he was a co-founder, and he is highlighted in the book. He helped usher in a more militant phase of the party. In 1960, they went for instant decolonization, which is like kind of a pretty radical thing, especially at that time. And I believe even after that was like a pretty radical way to approach.
And this is what's represented in the book when they have the previous people who were in the mission come and get them, and they're like, okay, Congo is going independent, you need to leave. And Oleana's like, I thought that we had months before, and they were like, nope,
Nope, immediate. Yeah, I
get
forgot
out.
about that. Yeah, that is super, super clear in the book. You're right.
Hmm.
And this was a result of there was growing turbulence and violence in Leopoldville.
Oh, and also
Yeah.
before you continue on to your next very important bullet point, we didn't point it out when discussing her character, but I do think it's important to say now that Leah is a big supporter of of
Yes.
Lumumba.
She names one of her children Patrice.
Yeah, so she and her husband were big supporters of him and his rule, essentially, his presidency. All right.
So after decolonization, this led into something called the Congo Crisis, which, judging by that name, is not a good thing that's happening. Lots of political upheaval and conflict between 1960 and 65. There was essentially a constitutional impasse where the president and the prime minister was Lumumba, were of opposing parties and thoughts. So they were just kind of like head to head there. Lumumba was he wanted the UN to use force against people as needed, and then also appealed to the USSR to send troops, which obviously the US, in the height of the Cold War,
Did
did
not
not
like.
take kindly to this. Lumumba was arrested, escaped, and executed, which was, I mean, executed, assassinated, depends on what source you're reading.
Politically motivated
Yes,
killing.
depends on what source you're reading. Um, and this was all displayed in the book as well, and this started to more politically radicalize Leah. I don't think radical, but like politically motivate her. Things kind of have continued pretty tumultuously. Mobutu, who I don't remember if he was in the book or not, but he was a
Briefly.
leader who pulled a second coup in 1965, so kind of at the tail end of the crisis. He led for 32 years until he was deposed. He had a fragile power. There were a lot of conflicts both within Congo, or there were a lot of fighting both within the country itself and with other countries as well. And actually, as recent of June of 2025, so this year, the Congo and Rwanda signed a peace treaty here in DC to end their conflict. So you can see that there are steps being, made to more peace, but obviously the lasting and lingering effects of colonialism and then also US and USSR interference during the Cold War, all of it is not great.
And they make a point in the book that's very prescient because obviously the book came out almost 30 years ago, where Leah's husband says, we have been hobbled forever because of the way that specifically the US, other countries like Europe too, but specifically talking about the US,
Mhm.
has basically grabbed hold of trade in Congo of the natural resources, specifically the cobalt, which is now more
Yep.
valuable than ever because of technology.
Mhm.
And that goes on to this day, that there are untenable working conditions, and also that the money from Congo does not stay in Congo.
Exactly. So they're still being exploited. These things, it's very harrowing to see that, this book can their stories, if say these characters were immortal, their stories could continue on and they would still be,
Mhm.
I think of specifically like Leah and her family.
Well, that's an ending to the historical accuracy like it is to the book, which is kind of a bummer, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and I didn't even go into detail with like a lot of like the US involvement and everything in this because it's just such a vast history of the Congo and independence and all of this that I didn't want to get bogged down into too many details. I mean, we've already been recording for over an hour. This is a subject I personally want to educate myself more about. I found it very fascinating and also much to Barbara Kingsolver's point of this is not something that is knowledge we like to admit in the US. So it's more important, especially now than ever, to be educating ourselves. So.
Mhm.
There you
And
have it.
especially because, I'll say, of course, if I'm not in charge of any of our military action in the Congo, I'm not in charge of any of our business in the Congo, I have a smartphone and I'm not going to not have a smartphone.
Hmm.
So, anyone at home listening, think about what device you're listening on
Yeah. And
and,
it's
what
what Barbara
culpability
King
that we have. Like
It's
just
what
like that the daughters have. They didn't choose to go to the Congo, but what culpability do they have being there?
it's exactly like what Barbara Kingsolver said of every industrialized country has arrived where it is today by doing terrible things, and every citizen materially benefits from that.
Hmm.
And that's just something to, I don't know, think about. I don't know if think about's the right phrase there, but it's an important thing to not be ignorant to. And again,
Agree.
that's not like you have to go around like I don't know what I was going to say
You
there.
don't have to let it ruin your life,
Yeah,
but you have to,
you don't have
think
to
about it
like
at
let
least a
it ruin your
little.
life, but it's important to be aware of and to, not deny and not try to ignore.
Yeah.
All right, star calculator.
Yeah. Let's go.
All right, historical accuracy, originality, characters, prose, and vibes. And I'm gonna let you go first.
Okay. I'm giving it straight fives.
Oh boy.
Fives across the board. This book is fantastic. I love this book. I would recommend it to absolutely anybody. I only basically have positive things to say about it. I love this book.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm almost going straight vibes. I'm going a 4 in vibes because that first section just like, and again, in hindsight, it worked really well. In the moment of reading it, I was like,
Slow.
let's go, let's move on. So that's a 4.8. That is still a 5. I think I rated this like a 4 originally, but again, it's one of those ones that really like grow over time, in my opinion.
How long have we been doing this that we don't pull up our story graph like first? Okay, I gave it a five. You gave it a 4.25.
Okay, okay, that's not as
It's
bad
still
as
above average.
that is above average.
Because to
Sorry.
me, the average is a four when I'm like, maybe not for the pod because we're picking books for the pod, but when I'm
Mhm.
picking a book like to read because I want to read it, I assume I'm gonna like it.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
You're so right. We should just keep this open at all times. Anyways,
I
and it'll
know.
help when we're about to introduce what we're reading next week. And would you like to share what book we're reading next week?
Of course. Well, actually, next week, we're not going to be reading anything because
Oh, you're
we're
so
taking a
right.
break next week.
Oh my God, it's Thanksgiving and also I'm on my cruise. I completely
So,
forgot.
we hope that you all enjoy your week off, that maybe you have something else to listen to,
The
maybe an
Bones
audiobook,
podcast, perhaps.
the Bones podcast, an audiobook, an album, anything else because you're not listening to, you could listen to our back catalog next week.
The bonus episodes are there for a reason.
But then after that, we will be reading The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Schaffer and Annie Barrows. And we will be joined by another guest host, another repeat guest host, our friend Kat.
And you all know Kat from such episodes as Babel. I think that was the only episode she's been in so far. She's contributed greatly to our movie nights, and we are famously her second favorite podcast after the Bones podcast.
Yes, but we're not mad at her for it.
It's
It's
okay.
okay.
It's okay. All right, and in the meantime, while you're looking for something to scroll through and don't have an episode to listen to, check out our Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at @5orflop_pod and make sure you're signed up for a Storygraph reading challenge. And now that I think are we over halfway through? I don't know. I don't think we're over halfway through.
No,
No, we're
not
not.
yet.
I've just looked at Storygraph and I'm over halfway through because I'm ahead of reading.
Well, I checked again. We are at 7 participants on our Storygraph reading challenge. And don't forget, our goal is 10. So please tell your friends.
Please, please.
But if you think that there is something else we should be reading, if you consider yourself our family, our friend, then please fill out the recommendation form in the bio of any of our social medias or send us an email at vibraflawpodcast@gmail.com.
And special thank you to Ryleigh once again for recommending this book. It was a lot of, no, it wasn't a lot of fun to read. It was actually a very sad book, but we've had a really engaging discussion. And to me, that is something that is fun.
Exactly. So thank you, Ryleigh. I appreciate it.
And until next time,
Happy reading.
bye.